The air in the clandestine university laboratory, tucked away in a forgotten sub-basement of a brutalist concrete building, hums with a power that has nothing to do with the city's electrical grid. It is a deep, subauditory thrum that vibrates through the soles of the shoes and settles unpleasantly in the teeth. Dr. Aris Thorne, a man in his late 30s with wild, dark hair streaked prematurely with silver and eyes, shadowed by too many sleepless nights, moves through the chaotic symphony of his own creation with a frantic, almost desperate energy. The lab is a cathedral of theoretical physics, a sprawling space where chalkboards groan under the weight of esoteric equations, their surfaces a tapestry of white, yellow, and blue scrawls that look more like arcane summoning circles than mathematical formulae. Wires, thick and coiling like dormant serpents, snake across the cold concrete floor, connecting humming server racks to the room's centerpiece. A monstrous, concentric ring of polished bronze and shimmering, unknown alloy that stands upright, crackling with arcs of blue-white energy. This is the Chronos resonance engine, Aris's life's work, his obsession, and his profound, unauthorized secret. Stabilization at 97% and climbing, he mutters to himself, his voice a dry rasp as he adjusts a series of crystalline dials on the main control console, a beast of reclaimed steampunk aesthetics and cutting-edge quantum computing. The smell of ozone, sharp and metallic, mixes with the older, deeper sense of machine oil, dusty tomes, and the faint, ever-present damp of the London earth surrounding them. Come on, come on. Just a little more. A sustained bridge. A peek behind the curtain of reality. His heart hammers against his ribs, a frantic bird trapped in the cage of his chest. This is the 73rd test, but the first with the new harmonic calibrations derived from his controversial work on temporal string theory. He can feel the potential in the air, a pressure building that makes his ears pop. He ignores the rational, cautious part of his brain, the part that sounds like his skeptical department head, and pushes forward, his fingers flying across a holographic interface that flickers with streams of impossibly complex data. He inputs the final command sequence. For a moment, nothing happens. The hum deepens, dropping into a register that is felt more than heard, a profound bass note that shakes the dust from the high, iron cross-beamed ceiling. Then, the center of the bronze rings begins to warp. It is not an explosion of light, but a violent implosion of reality itself. The air in the center of the machine tears open like rotten silk, revealing not a void, but a swirling, chaotic vortex of compressed time. It is a storm of stolen moments, glimpses of verdant jungles superimposed over smog-choked cityscapes, the sounds of clashing steel echoing against the silent hum of servers, the scent of salt water and old wood momentarily overpowering the ozone. This is the time storm, a localized, catastrophic rupture in the fabric of causality, and Aris can only stare, his jaw slack with a mixture of terror and transcendent awe. From the maelstrom, figures are violently ejected, thrown from the heart of the temporal breach as if discarded by a capricious god. They land in a tangled, groaning heap on the cold laboratory floor, their arrivals punctuated by the sudden, deafening silence as the Chronos resonance engine powers down with a pained whine, its rings glowing a dull, angry red. The first to untangle herself is a woman clad in form-fitting, gray-smoked fabric that seems to drink the light. Elara Vance, her hair a shock of platinum white cut in a severe, practical bob, moves with a predator's grace, rolling to her feet in a single, fluid motion. Her eyes, a piercing, cold blue, scan the room with a terrifying, analytical speed, taking in the anachronistic mix of technology, the chalkboards, the man at the console. Her mind, a sharp tool honed in the corporate espionage wars of 2145, immediately begins assessing threats, exits, and tactical advantages. The disorientation is there, a dizzying lurch in her stomach, but it is ruthlessly suppressed beneath layers of training and cold pragmatism. Her hand instinctively goes to her hip, where a weapon should be, and finds nothing but the strange, seamless texture of her jumpsuit. From the pile, a man in a beautifully embroidered, dark silk kimono stumbles to his feet, his movements gentle and utterly bewildered. Kaito Tanaka, a botanist from the peaceful, isolated era of 1797 Edo period Japan, clutches a small, carefully wrapped parcel of seeds to his chest, as if it were a holy talisman. His dark eyes, wide with a fear he cannot name, take in the monstrous machinery, the harsh electric lights, the strange, glowing screens. The smells are a violent assault, acrid, chemical, and utterly alien compared to the gentle fragrances of ink, paper, and cultivated earth he knows. He murmurs a quiet, desperate prayer in Japanese, his knuckles white as he grips his precious package, his entire world view shattering in the span of a single, terrifying heartbeat. The last figure rises slowly, his movements stiff and deliberate. Captain Elias Thorne stands tall in his weathered, brown leather flight jacket, the faint, familiar smells of engine grease, damp wool, and cordite clinging to him like a ghost. His face, handsome and stern beneath a pilot's cap, is a mask of stoic confusion, but his eyes, the same shade of stormy gray as the man staring at him from the console, betray a deep, profound shock. He looks at Aris, and then down at his own hands, as if verifying his own solidity. What in God's name is this? His voice is a low, gravelly baritone, etched with the tension of countless hours in the cockpit over the trenches of France. A German trick. Some new form of gas. His mind, conditioned by the horrors of the Great War, scrambles for a logical martial explanation, finding none in this sterile, alien environment. Aris Thorne can only stare, his mind, so brilliant with abstract theory, completely short-circuiting at the concrete, impossible reality before him. His experiment didn't just open a window, it pulled passengers through. His eyes sweep over the corporate agent from a future he can barely conceive, the gentle scholar from a romanticized past, and the WWI pilot. His eyes linger on the pilot. On the familiar set of his jaw, the distinct shape of his brow, features he has only ever seen in grainy, sepia-toned photographs kept in a cherished family album. A cold, disbelieving dread trickles down his spine, freezing him in place. It is Elara who breaks the stunned silence, her voice cutting through the thick, ozone-charged air like a shard of ice. Location and temporal designation. Now, she takes a step towards Aris, her posture radiating controlled menace. The energy signature was a chronoton surge of unprecedented magnitude. Was this an attack? A retrieval mission? Identify yourself and your corporate allegiance. He steps forward, instinctively placing himself between the strange, threatening woman and the bewildered man in the kimono, a chivalrous reflex from a different age. "You will stand down, madam," he commands, his voice gaining a hard edge. "I don't know what game this is, but you will explain yourself." His hand twitches, reaching for the sidearm that is not there. Kaito flinches at the raised voices, shrinking back towards a stack of crates, his mind reeling. The gargantuan, noisy, and terrifying metal bird outside the single, grime-caked window, a passing aeroplane, is a creature from his most fevered nightmares. The world is too loud, too bright, too harsh. "No, no, no, this is all wrong," Aris finally breathes, his voice barely a whisper. He runs a trembling hand through his already disheveled hair. The resonance was supposed to be observational. Non-interactive. You shouldn't be here. This is impossible." His scientific bravado has completely evaporated, leaving only the raw, terrified man beneath. Elias' sharp eyes narrow, finally truly focusing on Aris's face. He studies the features, the stormy gray eyes so like his own, the familiar line of the nose. A flicker of impossible recognition, a ghost from a future not yet lived, passes through his mind. "You," Elias says, his voice losing its commanding tone and becoming laced with a bewildered uncertainty. "Who are you? I know your face." A bank of capacitors on the Chrono's resonance engine, overstressed by the catastrophic surge, explodes in a shower of brilliant white sparks and acrid black smoke. The lights in the lab flicker violently, plunging the room into a strobing, chaotic dance of light and shadow. From within the still smoldering heart of the machine, a new sound emerges, not a hum, but a high-pitched, agonized shriek of rending metal and overloading systems. A web of hairline fractures, glowing with the same malevolent red energy, begins to spiderweb across the surface of the central bronze ring. The temporal bridge, The only conceivable way to send these unwilling guests home is not just unstable. It is critically, visibly breaking apart, and the four of them are stranded at the epicenter of a disaster of epical proportions. Their fuses inextricably linked to a machine that is screaming its own death throes into the tense, smoky air. The sound is a physical pressure, a promise of utter oblivion, and it is growing louder. The crimson emergency lights cast long, distorted shadows that seem to claw at the walls of the cavernous laboratory, transforming the familiar space into a menacing, alien landscape. The air remains thick with the cloying, acrid stench of burnt insulation and superheated metal, a smell that coats the back of the throat and lingers unpleasantly in the sinuses. The four figures move through this oppressive gloom like ghosts, their movements frantic and disjointed. Their breathing the only other sound besides the agonized, guttural groans emanating from the mortally wounded Chrono's resonance engine. The search for the impossible plant, the Eterna Viridis asterisk, is conducted with a desperate, scraping urgency, a race against a temporal clock that none of them can see, but all of them can feel ticking down in the very marrow of their bones. "Doctor!" Aris Thorne drops to his hands and knees, his fingers scrabbling through the dust and grime beneath the main control console, ignoring the sharp edges of shattered components and the lingering, dangerous heat from the overloaded systems. His mind, a whirlwind of frantic calculations and burgeoning hope, replays Kaito's words on a continuous, desperate loop. A biological quantum state collapser. A living catalyst. The concepts are heretical, magical, yet the evidence, that single celestial blue bud, is irrefutable. He can feel the phantom weight of Elias' stare, the crushing burden of having revealed a man's death to him, a wound he inflicted with his own reckless ambition. I didn't just break physics, asterisk, he thinks, his internal monologue a torrent of self-recrimination and frantic hope. I broke a man. My own blood. What kind of monster does that? But this plant, this miracle, it can fix the machine. It can give him back his future. It has to. Please let there be more. His probing fingers, slick with sweat and soot, find only more dust, more twisted wire, more broken ceramic. The hope that had flared so brightly within him begins to dim, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. Across the vast room, Captain Elias Thorne methodically searches behind a towering stack of wooden crates filled with spare vacuum tubes and obsolete computing parts. His movements are stiff, deliberate, a soldier conducting a reconnaissance mission in a territory more alien and terrifying than any no-man's land. The initial, soul-shattering shock of Aris's revelation has been subsumed, for now, beneath a layer of pure, focused survival instinct. The Western Front had taught him that to stop moving was to die, and to dwell on the horrors was to go mad. The Psalm, 1917. A hero. The words echo in his mind, but he forcibly pushes them down, locking them away in a mental strongbox. This is the mission now. Find the plant. Fix the machine. Get home. See Elara. Hold my son. The thought of his wife's face, the memory of his infant son's tiny hand clutching his finger, fuels a fire within him that burns hotter than any fear. His eyes, adapted for spotting enemy aircraft in the vast expanse of the sky, now scan the minute details of the floor, searching for a telltale splash of vibrant green or that impossible celestial blue. He moves a heavy crate with a grunt, the muscles in his back straining, revealing only a dead spider, its web thick with the dust of decades. A profound frustration builds within him. the frustration of a man of action confronted with a problem that cannot be solved with courage or a well-aimed bullet. Kaito Tanaka moves with a different kind of purpose, his approach not one of frantic searching, but of quiet, reverent observation. He does not rush. He glides, his senses attuned to the subtle whispers of life that others in their panic would overlook. He ignores the large, open spaces, instead drawn to the narrow, dark crevices where light and hope seem scarcest. He runs his slender fingers along the base of a cold, concrete pillar, feeling for the faintest hint of moisture, the slightest vibration of growth. The terrifying cacophony of this metal world has receded in his mind, replaced by the singular, beautiful mystery of the Eterna Viridi's asterisk. To find a legend walking in the world is a privilege that transcends fear. It is a sign asterisk, he thinks, his heart fluttering with a scholar's exhilaration amidst the terror. A gift from the currents of time themselves. It does not grow to mock us, but to guide us. We must be worthy of its grace. He kneels, peering into the dark, narrow gap between a server rack and the wall, his dark eyes searching the profound blackness for a glimmer of life. He sees nothing but impenetrable shadow and the glint of a discarded screw. Elara Vance operates with a cold, systematic efficiency that is unnerving in its precision. She has scaled a gantry ladder to inspect the upper reaches of the Chrono's resonance engine itself, her form-fitting gray jumpsuit making her almost indistinguishable from the shadows that cling to the monstrous device. Her mind is a fortress of logic, and the folktale of the plant is merely a new, unverified data point to be exploited. Her primary focus, however, remains the iridescent data chip she now holds openly in her palm, its soft, rhythmic pulse a silent countdown to a mission objective that only she understands. As she scans the top of the cracked bronze ring, her eyes, enhanced with subdermal optics she has not revealed, filter through multiple spectra. She is not just looking for a plant. She is analyzing the entropic decay signature, mapping the residual chronoton particles, searching for any clue as to who, or what, hijacked Aris's experiment and pulled her here. The emotional turmoil of the others is a variable she notes and dismisses. The captain's existential crisis is irrelevant. The botanist's mysticism is a potential resource. Thorne's guilt is a liability. My window is closing. This world resin is the most expedient path to re-establishing a stable bridge. I must acquire it. Her enhanced gaze sweeps over the complex topography of the machine, seeing stress fractures and energy leaks in stark thermal relief. But there is no plant, no miraculous vine growing from the epicenter of the temporal wound. A flicker of cold impatience runs through her. This is taking too long. Anything. Aris's voice calls out, strained and hoarse, breaking the tense silence from his position under the console. The word is laden with a hope so fragile it is almost painful to hear. Anyone see anything at all? Even a leaf. A sprout. Nothing but dust and decay. This is a fool's errand. He kicks at a small, empty metal canister, sending it clattering noisily across the concrete floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the tense silence. Kaito slowly rises from his knees near the pillar, his shoulders slumping in a silent admission of defeat. He shakes his head, a gesture of profound sorrow, his eyes downcast. The weight of their collective despair begins to press down on them, heavier than the ceiling, more suffocating than the smoke. The groaning of the dying machine seems to grow louder, taunting them, a reminder of their impending erasure. It is then, as Elara prepares to descend from the gantry, her mind already racing to formulate a contingency plan that likely involves sacrificing the others for her own objectives, that her enhanced peripheral vision catches an anomaly. A faint, almost imperceptible bioluminescent signature, invisible to the human eye, registers on her optical display. It is not on the machine or on the floor, but behind the wall. A thermal scan reveals a slight drop in temperature in a specific, rectangular section of the concrete wall near the back of the lab, an area obscured by a heavy, floor-to-ceiling drape of thick, black industrial fabric, used by Aris for sound dampening during early, noisy tests. Doctor, Elara's voice is sharp, commanding, cutting through the gloom. She points a slender, unerring finger towards the black drape. What is behind that partition? That? Nothing. It's just the back wall. It's reinforced concrete, part of the building's original foundation. There's nothing there. But even as he says the words, a distant, half-forgotten memory stirs. An architectural blueprint he'd seen years ago when he first secured this sub-basement. A notation about a sealed-off utility conduit, long since abandoned. Elara is already moving, descending the ladder with a fluid, gravity-defying grace and striding purposefully towards the black drape. The others watch, their own failed searches forgotten, a new, tentative hope kindling in their chests at the sheer certainty in her movements. She doesn't pull the drape aside. She runs her hand along the edge of the wall, her fingers searching for a seam, a crack, anything. The thermal signature is anomalous, she states without looking back, her voice devoid of emotion. There is a void space behind this wall. And the bio-signature, it matches the resonance frequency of the specimen on your console. Her fingers suddenly stop. There is a draft. He grabs a handful of the heavy black fabric and yanks it aside with a grunt, the rusted grommets screeching in protest as they slide along the metal rod. A cloud of thick, ancient dust billows out, causing Kaito to cough and wave a hand in front of his face. Revealed behind the drape is not a smooth, solid wall, but a section of concrete that is visibly different, older, more roughly finished, with a long, almost invisible vertical crack running from floor to ceiling. And at the base of this crack, where the cold, damp concrete meets the floor, is a sight that steals the breath from all of them. A profusion of the asterisk Eterna, Virides asterisk, grows in a tangled, beautiful cascade. Dozens of vines, thick and healthy, covered in heart-shaped leaves of a green so vibrant it seems to generate its own light in the crimson gloom, spill out from the narrow fissure. And nestled among the leaves are not just buds, but fully opened flowers, their petals the color of a deep, star-filled twilight, each one seeming to contain a miniature, swirling galaxy within its delicate form. The air around the fissure is different, colder, cleaner, and filled with a soft, melodic hum that is the polar opposite of the machine's death rattle. It is a small, thriving ecosystem of temporal stability, flourishing in the shadow of the catastrophic rupture. Kaito gasps, falling to his knees before the miraculous growth, his hands pressed together in a gesture of pure, unadulterated wonder. It is a grove, he whispers, his voice trembling with awe. A sacred grove. The foundation, the crack, it must run deep, all the way down to the bedrock. The temporal energy from the machine, it's been channeled down here, focusing the wound, creating the perfect conditions. It is a paradox that defies all his understanding of the world. From his heap amidst the shattered instrument carts, Captain Elias Thorne, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, and moving with the agonizing slowness of broken ribs, lifts his head. His stormy gray eyes, clouded with pain and the dizzying impact, nonetheless fix on Elara's retreating back with a clarity that transcends physical suffering. He sees the precise, terrifying slit in reality, the sterile future waiting to claim its agent, and the absolute ruin of their only hope. The soldier in him, the part that has seen entire battalions sacrificed for a few yards of muddy ground, recognizes the finality of this moment. This is not a battle for survival anymore. It is a battle for the soul of history itself. A cold, grim resolve, colder than the mud of the trenches, colder than the altitudinal freeze at 10,000 feet, settles deep within his bones. He may not understand the physics, the paradoxes, or the cosmic scale of her mission, but he understands betrayal. He understands the look of a fanatic who has decided that countless lives are an acceptable cost for an ideal. And he understands, with a chilling, final certainty, that he cannot let her pass through that doorway. His hand, trembling with the effort, scrabbles through the wreckage of glass and twisted metal around him, his fingers closing not around a weapon, but around a long, jagged shard of the broken glass instrument cart, its edges sharp enough to slice through leather and flesh. It is a pitiful weapon against a goddess of time, but it is all he has. With a guttural roar that is part pain, part defiance, and part a final farewell to the family he now knows he will never see again, he pushes himself up from the floor, ignoring the white-hot agony that lances through his chest, and lunges, not at Elara, but at the sphere of world resin hovering just above her data chip. Elara, her senses heightened by her future tech enhancements, registers his movement a fraction of a second too late. Her focus had been entirely on stabilizing the temporal gateway, on the complex handshake protocol between the resin and the chip. Elias' desperate, pain-fueled lunge is an variable of pure, chaotic desperation she had not adequately weighted in her calculations. She twists, her body moving with impossible speed, but the glass shard in Elias' hand does not aim for her body. It arcs downward in a final, committed sweep, its jagged tip aimed directly for the pulsating, symbiotic connection between the data chip and the sphere of solidified time. The result is not a physical impact, but a catastrophic dissonance. The glass, a substance born of sand and fire, a fundamental material of the earth, touches the surface of the world resin. It does not shatter, it unmakes asterisk. The moment the non-reactive, pure silica makes contact with the hypercharged, temporally active fluid, it triggers a violent, unpredictable reaction. The perfect, harmonious energy of the resin, so carefully synchronized with the data chip, is violently disrupted. The sphere of liquid light does not explode, it convulses. The beautiful, swirling geometric patterns on its surface shatter into a frantic, chaotic static of conflicting energies. The high, crystalline chime that had been a note of pure order twists into a deafening, atonal screech, a sound of a universe being torn in two different directions at once. A shockwave of raw, discordant temporal force erupts from the point of contact, a visible ripple of distorted space that hits Elara, Elias, and the entire laboratory like a physical tsunami. Elara Vance is thrown backward, a cry of genuine shock and fury ripped from her lips for the first time. The data chip in her hand flares with a panicked, erratic light, its surface cracking under the feedback surge. The precise, razor-cut gateway to 2145 wavers violently, its edges blurring and becoming jagged, the image of the sterile control room flickering like a bad hologram, the impassive faces of her comrades twisting into masks of alarm and confusion. The path to her revolution, so perfectly laid, is now collapsing into a storm of her own making. Her mind, a fortress of logic, is flooded with a torrent of error messages and cascading system failures. The primitive. He used a primitive catalyst. The resonance is fracturing. The target coordinates are degrading. Her mission, her purpose, everything she has sacrificed for, is unraveling because of a piece of glass in the hands of a man who should be dust in a forgotten grave. Elias takes the full, concussive force of the blast directly in the chest. The air is driven from his lungs in a single, agonized whoosh. He feels not a blow, but a profound, internal asterisk-tearing asterisk sensation, as if his very molecules are being pulled apart. He is lifted off his feet and hurled back across the laboratory, his body a limp doll in the grip of an angry god. He lands in a broken heap near the main entrance, his world reduced to a pinpoint of blinding white pain and the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth. His last conscious thought is not of the war or of his death over the Somme, but of the wild, desperate eyes of his great-grandson, and a profound, sorrowful regret that he could not do more. Dr. Aris Thorne, who had been frozen in a state of catatonic horror, is jolted into action by the violent detonation of temporal energy. The wave of force slams into him, but its effect is different. It is not a physical blow, but a nauseating, vertiginous lurch, a sensation of his consciousness being violently yanked in a dozen different directions at once. The world around him strobes. One moment, he sees the crimson-lit lab. The next, he is standing in a sun-drenched field he recognizes from a childhood holiday, the smell of cut grass overwhelming the ozone. The next, he is an old man, looking down at his own gnarled, age-spotted hands resting on a blanket. He is experiencing temporal dissonance, the very erasure he had warned them about, the machine's collapse now supercharged by the corrupted world resin. He stumbles, vomiting violently onto the concrete floor, his body trembling with a seizure-like intensity. Through the disorienting flashes of other Wens, his training screams at him. The energy has to go somewhere. It's not contained. It's creating a feedback loop through our own quantum signatures. We're acting as living conduits, amplifying the chaos. Kaito Tanaka, still curled on the floor by the withering grove, experiences the dissonance not as a physical or mental assault, but as a spiritual apocalypse. One moment he is in the terrifying, loud laboratory. The next he is kneeling in the serene, perfectly raked gravel of his master's garden in Edo, the scent of cherry blossoms and wet stone so vivid it brings tears to his eyes. The next he is nowhere, a formless consciousness adrift in a gray, silent void, utterly alone. The flickering is excruciating, a constant, jarring relocation of his soul. He sees the beautiful vines of the asterisk Eterna virides behind him flicker in and out of existence, their vibrant green fading to a sickly gray, their celestial blue flowers wilting and turning to dust in one moment, only to reappear, vibrant and whole, in the next. He understands then, with a clarity that transcends his terror, that the plant is not dying because of his failure, but because the very wound it was healing is now being torn open wider with every passing second. The harmony has been shattered, and the song of time is now a scream of agony. The chrono's resonance engine, responding to the massive, uncontrolled release of energy, enters its final death throes. The web of crimson fractures on the central bronze ring, glows with such intense, malevolent light that the metal itself begins to run like molten lava, dripping in great, sizzling globs onto the concrete floor, where it burns deep, smoking pits. The shrieking, metallic groan rises to an ear-splitting crescendo that threatens to rupture their eardrums. The entire structure of the machine begins to visibly warp and bend inward, as if being crushed by an invisible, gigantic fist. The unstable temporal bridge, the tenuous thread connecting the three displaced souls to their native eras, is not just collapsing. It is being violently shredded by the storm of corrupted energy. The bridge! Aris screams, his voice a raw, desperate thing, fighting to be heard over the din. He stumbles toward the main console, his body flickering, one of his hands momentarily becoming translucent. He can see the readings on the few still functioning displays, and they are apocalyptic. It's tearing apart. The resonance is completely chaotic. I can't stabilize it. I can't target your return coordinates. The window is closing and the path home it's gone. It's all just storm. She looks at her data chip, its light now feeble and intermittent. She looks at the corrupted, pulsating mass of world resin, now sputtering and flinging droplets of wild, uncontrolled energy that burn tiny, shimmering holes in the very air where they land. She looks at the gateway, which is now a ragged, swirling vortex of conflicting timelines, no longer a clean passage to 2145, but a dangerous, unpredictable maelstrom. Her mission has failed. The grand redesign of history is impossible now. The calculus has been reduced to a single, brutal variable, survival. Her cold eyes sweep the room, taking in the flickering, disintegrating forms of Kaito and Aris, the unconscious body of the captain and the dying machine. A new grim calculation is made in the span of a single, shuddering heartbeat. The energy of the corrupted resin is still immense. The bridge is shattered, but the raw power of the temporal storm is at its peak. It is not enough to send everyone back. It is not enough to send anyone back safely. But it might be enough to punch a single, desperate, untargeted hole through the chaos, to eject one or two of them back into the flow of time, a random, brutal lottery with eternity. Thorne, she shouts, her voice finally showing strain, a hairline crack in her facade of absolute control. The energy is peaking. The cascade is terminal. We have one chance. The machine's core can be forced into a final overload pulse. It can't save everyone. The math is clear. The structural integrity can only channel a safe return trajectory for 3. One of us has to stay. One of us will be left behind when the bridge fully collapses. Stranded here, or worse, unmade by the feedback. The moral crisis he had feared, the impossible choice, is no longer a theoretical dilemma in a chalkboard equation. It is here, now, in the screaming, flickering, disintegrating heart of the storm. Aris looks from Elara, the ruthless architect of this disaster, to Kaito, the gentle soul he inadvertently doomed, to the motionless form of his own great-grandfather, the man whose future he stole and whose life he now holds in his hands. The weight of the decision is a physical agony, a mountain on his soul. He has to choose. He has to condemn someone to non-existence, to be erased from time to save the others. The frantic, chaotic light from the dying machine reflects in his wide, terrified eyes, illuminating the unbearable burden of playing God with human lives, a burden he never wanted, a power. The sharp, authoritative cadence of multiple pairs of heavy-soled boots, echoing down the concrete stairwell, beyond the laboratory's reinforced door acts like a bucket of ice water, thrown upon the fragile, hard-won peace that had settled over the 4 time-lost souls. The sound is a brutal, unwelcome reminder of a world outside this cavernous sub-basement, a world of rules, authorities, and consequences from which Dr. Aris Thorne's clandestine research has always been precariously shielded. The serene, golden light emanating from the healed grove of Eterna Viridi's asterisk seems to recoil from the harsh, mundane intrusion, its warm glow dimming slightly, as if the very atmosphere is being compressed by the approaching, bureaucratic threat. The deep, melodic hum of temporal stability falters, replaced by the increasingly distinct, staticky crackle of a police radio, and the gruff, muffled voices of men whose reality is defined by budgets, regulations, and simple, linear cause and effect. Dr. Aris Thorne's moment of profound, exhausted relief shatters into a million glittering shards of fresh, adrenaline-fueled panic. His heart, which had just begun to slow its frantic, bird-like hammering against his ribs, seizes up and then launches into a violent, pounding rhythm that thunders in his ears, drowning out all other sound. The blood drains from his face so rapidly he feels a wave of light-headed dizziness, forcing him to grip the edge of the miraculously restored control console for support, his knuckles turning white with the strain. His eyes, wide and frantic, sweep across his laboratory, a space that now looks like the aftermath of a bizarre and impossible conflict. While the Chrono's resonance engine itself stands whole and silent, its mortal wounds erased from time, the collateral damage is starkly evident. The shattered remains of the instrument cart that Captain Elias Thorne was thrown into lay in a scattered, gleaming heap of twisted metal and broken glass in a corner. Scorch marks from the initial capacitor explosions still darken sections of the concrete floor and several server racks, their acrid scent lingering faintly beneath the now-dominant fragrance of the blooming grove. And most damning of all are the room's inhabitants, a man in a beautifully embroidered, albeit soot-smudged, Edo-period kimono, a woman clad in form-fitting, gray-smoked future fabric that seems to drink the light, her hair a severe platinum bob that looks like nothing from this century, and a World War I pilot in a weathered leather flight jacket, his presence an anachronism so bold it feels like a physical slap to the face of conventional history. They'll see this. They'll see all of it. They'll see the machine, the damage, the people. My God, the people. How do I explain a pilot from 1917 and a botanist from 1797? They'll think I've lost my mind. They'll commit me. They'll confiscate everything. They'll tear the engine apart, bolt by bolt, and in doing so, they might accidentally trigger something I can't even predict. And Elara, her mere existence is a patent violation of 100 laws of physics I can't even begin to describe. We're not saved. We've just been granted a stay of execution, and the warden is at the door. Captain Elias Thorne is on his feet in an instant, his soldier's instinct snapping back into place with the crisp, automatic precision of a well-oiled rifle bolt. The profound confusion and the ghostly memory of searing pain are shoved aside, replaced by the immediate, tangible threat of discovery and capture. His posture straightens, his shoulders squaring, his stormy gray eyes narrowing as he assesses the laboratory's single, heavy entrance door as if it were a German fortification he needs to storm or defend. His mind, conditioned in the trenches, immediately begins calculating fields of fire, defensive positions, and potential weapons, his gaze darting towards the jagged shards of glass from the broken cart, towards a heavy metal wrench lying on a nearby workbench. The sound of the bootsteps is the sound of the military, of authority, and in his experience, authority in a time of crisis often meant being herded into a corner or being shot for asking the wrong questions. "Who is that?" he demands, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that vibrates with a tightly leashed tension. He takes a step closer to Aris, his body unconsciously positioning itself between his great-grandson and the perceived threat. "The police. The military. Are we under siege?" The concept of a university security team is so far removed from his reality of shelling and infantry charges that he automatically assumes the worst, his hand twitching at his side, reaching for the sidearm that has not been there for over a century. Kaito Tanaka stumbles back from the glorious, resurrected grove, his moment of transcendent joy and spiritual awe evaporating like morning dew under a scorching sun. The peaceful wonder in his dark eyes is instantly replaced by a raw, animalistic fear that he has not felt since the first terrifying seconds of his arrival in this metal hell. The approaching footsteps are the footsteps of the shogunate's magistrates, of samurai enforcers, of a rigid, unforgiving authority that he, as a simple botanist, has always instinctively avoided. In his time, such an intrusion into a private space could mean imprisonment, disgrace, or worse for him and his entire family line. He clutches the empty linen wrapping that once held his seeds, his only remaining touchstone to his own world, and shrinks back towards the deepest shadows behind the largest bank of server racks, his body trembling, his breath catching in his throat in shallow, terrified hitches. The golden light from the grove, which moments ago felt like a divine embrace, now feels like a spotlight, illuminating him for the inevitable capture and interrogation that must surely follow. He looks desperately towards Aris, his eyes pleading for guidance, for protection, for any kind of reassurance in this new, terrifying whirlwind of events. Only Elara Vance remains seemingly unperturbed, at least on the surface. Her body is still, her posture once again a model of controlled, efficient readiness. But her mind is a whirlwind of cold, swift calculation, her enhanced optics scanning the door, analyzing the thickness of the metal, estimating the number of individuals from the resonance of their footsteps, and accessing subdermal databases on 21st-century law enforcement protocols and capabilities. The data chip in her hand is dead, her mission a failure, but the core programming of self-preservation and tactical assessment is fully operational. Her cold blue eyes fix on Aris, and when she speaks, her voice is a low, urgent whisper that cuts through the rising panic of the two men from the past. This is a local constabulary or institutional security response, likely triggered by the seismic event and anomalous energy readings. Their primary objective will be to ascertain the source of the disturbance and ensure structural and public safety. They are not equipped to handle a temporal anomaly. Their cognitive frameworks will reject the evidence before them. They will default to the simplest explanation: industrial accident, illegal chemical experimentation, or mental instability. She takes a single, purposeful step towards Aris, her gaze intense and commanding. You are the only native of this time period. You are the only variable that can interface with them. You must provide a plausible, non-temporal narrative. Now, a gas leak, an electrical fire, a failed physics demonstration for a historical reenactment society. Her eyes flick dismissively towards Elias and Kaito, categorizing them as props in a cover story. Any explanation that does not involve the words time travel. If they are allowed to see the full scope of this, if they attempt to detain us, the probability of a catastrophic containment breach rises exponentially. A loud, percussive bang-bang-bang hammers against the reinforced steel, a sound so violently mundane and authoritative it seems to make the very air in the laboratory vibrate. A voice, amplified and distorted by a bullhorn, barks from the other side, its tones clipped and officious. University security. This is head of campus protection, Frank Walsh. Dr. Thorne, we have multiple alarms tripped from this sub-level. We have reports of structural shaking and power fluctuations across the entire brutalist wing. Open this door immediately and confirm your status. Do you require medical assistance? Is there a fire or a chemical hazard? He looks at Elara, whose expression is one of icy expectation. He looks at Elias, whose jaw is set in a grim, defiant line, ready for a fight. He looks towards the shadows where Kaito is hiding, seeing only the faint, terrified shimmer of silk. He is trapped, the weight of their safety and the secret of time itself, crushing down upon him once more. He has to speak. He has to lie. And he has to do it convincingly. He takes a deep, shuddering breath, forcing his voice into a semblance of calm as he calls out towards the door, his words echoing slightly in the vast, tense space. Frank, it's Aris. I'm here. I'm fine. We're all fine. He winces at the hesitation in his own voice, at the slight tremor he cannot fully suppress. It was a contained capacitor blowout in a new high-energy battery system I was testing. Some wiring overloaded, caused some small fires and a bit of smoke. It set off the sprinklers in here, ruined some historical artifacts my guests and I were studying. That's all. No ongoing hazard. The situation is completely under control. The lie feels flimsy, transparent, a house of cards built in a hurricane. He can almost feel Frank Walsh's skeptical frown through the solid steel of the door. There is a long, agonizing pause from the other side, filled only with the muted, staticky chatter of the security radios. The silence is more threatening than the knocking. Then Frank's voice returns, its tone laced with a deep, unmistakable suspicion. A battery system, Aris. In a sub-basement history archive. That's not what the power grid logs suggest. And we're reading residual heat signatures and ozone levels, consistent with something a hell of a lot bigger than a blown capacitor. I'm sorry, Doctor, but protocol is protocol. I need you to open this door. Right now. We need to do a visual confirmation and an environmental sweep. There are students and faculty in the building above. I have a responsibility to their safety. The lie has failed. They have sensors. They have data. They know he's lying. He looks frantically around the lab, his mind racing for another option, another story, but it is a barren landscape of impossibility. He can't fight them. He can't hide the evidence. He can't explain the truth. It is then that Elara moves. With a fluid, silent grace that is unnerving, she closes the distance between them. Her hand shoots out, not to touch him, but to point a slender, unerring finger at a section of the control console that Aris had always considered non-essential, a secondary panel used for diagnostic overflow and system backups. There, she whispers, her voice barely a breath, yet it carries a chilling certainty. The tertiary cooling system for your battery. Tell them the primary and secondary cooling loops failed. The thermal runaway caused the explosions and the seismic vibration. It is a technically